When England started trading, exploring, and conquering lands, it took the language with it. The rise of the British Empire is one of the main reasons why English spread across the world. The British Empire was expanding dramatically during the 1700s. European settlers quickly outnumbered the original population, and so English was established as the dominant language in most colonies. By the late 19th century, the empire's reach was truly global, and the language was also becoming global. Great Britain held colonies on every continent of the world, and the trade language in those areas was English, which meant that knowing English was important. After the British colonization of North America, English became the dominant language in the United States and in Canada. The growing culture and economical influence of the US and its status as a global superpower since World War II have significantly increased the languages spread across the world. Today, American English is predominantly influential because of the USA's dominance in television, popular music, cinema, trade, and technology, including the internet. Most websites on the internet are in English. Popular American movies and TV programs which people watch all over the world are in English. People listen to American music, and English is the language mostly used for business. So the world has been exposed to English in many ways, and that's why most people know the English language and would like to study it. Right now, it has been stated by experts that around 1/3 of the world's population has English as a native language, and even more study English as a second language. A working knowledge of English has become a necessity in a number of areas. It is the international language of communications, science, technology, business, medicine, aviation, maritime activities, and many more. Because of that, over 1 billion people speak English to at least a basic level. Hello everyone, I'm a soft skill trainer from the Department of Career Planning and Development, and welcome to another soft skill video session. Today we'll be discussing verbs as a part of speech and understanding what are regular and irregular verbs. A verb is a word that comes from the Latin word verbum. It is a part of speech that is used to describe emotion or convey a subject in action. Example of verbs include learn, walk, run, read, and so on. In most languages, a verb can be inflected or modified to portray a specific tense, voice, or mood. There are also verbs that also have to agree with a certain gender, argument, or person. Verbs play a vital role in English grammar and have a multitude of assignments. A verb is a very important part of any sentence. There are two main functions that a verb can play. There are those verbs that put a subject into motion, and other verbs that offer more clarification on the same subject. The most important thing that you need to note is that every subject must have a verb. If this rule is not followed, you will end up with a fragment, a big writing error. If you want to appreciate the importance of verbs, ask yourself, what can you do without verbs? The answer is simple: nothing. Experts claim that verbs are the most important part of speech when it comes to English language. Verbs are a very important part of speech. In fact, you cannot have a logical sentence that has no verb in it. They are the building blocks that help you come up with sentences that make sense. You can go ahead and try to make sentences that do not have any verbs. You will note that the sentences you compose, they are all useless. A verb goes further to explain the intensity of the feeling that was attached to the process of doing the action. They are the words that help you explain feelings and movements of life. In order to use many verb tenses in English, you need to know the past forms of the verbs. All verbs have a base form or infinitive. The majority of verbs, called regular verbs, follow the same pattern and create the past simple and the past participle using the same word ending with ed. There are, however, verbs that have different endings, and these are called irregular verbs. Here is how to learn regular and irregular verbs with examples and also some tips on how to remember them. Every verb in English can have a base form, an ing form, a past simple form, and a past participle. We use the base form for the present simple tense, for example, they live in Rome, and the infinitive, for example, I want to learn English. We use the ing form or the gerund for continuous tenses like the present continuous, for example, he's working, and verbs as nouns, for example, swimming is good for you. And we can use the past participle for perfect tenses like the present perfect, for example, I've finished. Also the passive form, for example, it was made in Japan. And the adjectives, for example, the chair is broken. Regular verbs in English create the past simple and past participle by adding ed to the base form. By referring to the image on the screen, you can see the examples where arrive, call and wait in their base form become arrived, called and waited in their past simple form, and arrived, called and waited again in the past participle form. If the verb ends in the consonant and the letter Y, we change the letter Y to I and added ed. For example, marry and studied in the base form become married and studied in their past simple form, and remain married and studied in their past participle form as well. Furthermore, if a verb ends in the letter E, we simply add D. For example, the base form for hate and like turns in the simple past form to hated and liked, and in the past participle form it becomes hated and liked. Here are some examples of irregular verbs. Yesterday, Jack studied all day. Raul has accepted the job offer. Have you finished yet? We really liked the film we watched last night. There are about 200 irregular verbs in English. We can divide these into 4 types. First, verbs which have the same base form, past simple and past participle. Second, verbs which have the same past simple and past participle. Third, verbs which have the same base form and past participle. And finally, fourth, verbs which have a different base form, past simple and past participle. A good way to learn irregular verbs is to study them in these groups, because as they are similar, they are easier to remember. Here are the most common irregular verbs in these groups. These are the examples for group 1. First, our car cost a lot of money, but it's always breaking down. Pasha hurt himself in a soccer match last weekend. My parents have let me stay out late tonight. They put on their jackets because it was very cold. For the second group, we have the examples as they had lunch at a Thai restaurant on Monday. Have you heard the news about the train strike? Tim has sent an email to all the suppliers. Who won the match? The Giants. The examples for the third group are: he came back home at 4 a.m. on Saturday. Susie has become the managing director. The dog ran into the garden after Lee opened the door. Has Mrs. O'Connor come back from lunch? And the example for the final fourth group are: the kids ate a lot of cakes at the party. They drove to the airport and left their car there. Has she taken her tickets yet? I've written a letter of application for the manager's job. That brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you for watching it. Have a good day, stay blessed, stay happy, take care.